Mannie Fresh produced 23 million units sold at Cash Money Records. He produced 400 Degrees Ease, which sold 5 million copies alone. He produced Back That Ass Up, which is on Rolling Stone's list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. He produced Still Fly, which earned 2 Grammy nominations. He produced Bling Bling, a phrase that entered the actual dictionary as a cultural artifact. He produced nearly every record that made Cash Money one of the most dominant labels in the history of Southern rap. And the number he was clearing per beat during those peak years was reportedly around $50,000. Hold that math in your head for a second, because when you run the actual numbers on what those records generated versus what the man who made them was reportedly being paid, the picture that emerges is one of the most striking financial contrasts in hip-hop history. Byron Thomas, known to the world as Mannie Fresh, was born on March 20, 1969, in the 7th Ward of New Orleans. His father was DJ Sabu, a respected figure on the New Orleans club circuit who understood sound and crowd energy the way most people understand their native language. Mannie grew up watching his father work, absorbing music through pure proximity, and by the time he was a teenager, he was DJing school dances across the city, running an 88 drum machine over whatever he was spinning, layering live production elements into his sets in ways that turned ordinary parties into something else entirely. He came up through the New Orleans hip-hop scene in the late 1980s, worked with local rapper Gregory D, and released material through RCA Records before a bad major label experience left him frustrated and wiser about what the corporate music machine actually looked like from the inside. He walked away from that knowing 2 things. He was talented enough to build something significant, and he was never going to hand control of that something to people who did not understand the culture. In 1993, he met Brian Williams, Birdman, and his older brother Ronald, known as Slim. The 2 brothers had founded Cash Money Records 2 years earlier in 1991. At that point, it was a raw regional independent, pressing records and selling them out of the trunk, building a local reputation through hustle and an intimate knowledge of what New Orleans music fans actually responded to. Birdman made Mannie a direct offer: come be the in-house producer, handle all the beats, and help build this from the ground up. Mannie accepted, and what he built over the next decade became the foundation of an empire. Throughout the mid-1990s, Cash Money moved through the regional circuit with Mannie producing everything the label put out. No outside producers, no major label backing, just the in-house sound he was developing in real time. Syncopated drum patterns borrowed from New Orleans jazz drummers, bounce music energy from the city's clubs, live instruments layered over heavy bass in a way that felt like nowhere else on earth. By the time Cash Money was ready for a national conversation, the sound was already fully formed. That was Mannie's work. In 1997, Juvenile independently released an album called Soul Ya Rags that moved 200,000 copies without national distribution. That number caught the attention of Universal Records executives at a moment when Southern rap barely registered on the national radar. It gave the Williams brothers the leverage to walk into negotiations with one of the biggest music companies in the world and demand extraordinary terms. What they got in March 1998 was the deal that changed everything: a $30 million pressing and distribution agreement that gave Cash Money 85% of its royalties, full ownership of all master recordings, and structured Universal's distribution fee at approximately 7%. It was negotiated with the help of music advocate Wendy Day and her organization, the Rap Coalition. Hip-hop journalism called it the Louisiana Purchase. The comparison was earned. Cash Money's first major release under that deal was Juvenile's 400 Degrees in November 1998, produced entirely by Mannie Fresh. It peaked at number 9 on the Billboard 200 and sold more than 5 million copies worldwide. Between 1998 and 2003, Cash Money released 18 top 5 Billboard singles and 11 platinum or multi-platinum albums. The Hot Boys' Guerrilla Warfare went platinum. Bee Gees' Chopper City in the Ghetto went platinum. Lil Wayne's Thaw Block Is Hot went platinum. Big Timer's Hood Rich debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200. 23 million units sold total. 17 RIA-certified singles, nearly all of it produced by one man. Now let's talk about what Mannie was actually being paid for that output. He has spoken in various interviews about clearing around $50,000 or more per beat during the peak years. That number sounds significant until you hold it against the revenue those beats were generating. At a late 1990s physical album wholesale price of roughly $12 per unit, Juvenile's 400 Degrees alone generated approximately $60 million in wholesale revenue. A producer, properly entitled to a standard 2% royalty on that single album, would be looking at over $1 million from that record alone. Before publishing royalties, before radio performance income, before sync licensing, before any of the other revenue streams a properly structured deal would include. Mannie has consistently implied in interviews that his compensation was dramatically below what the commercial record would suggest he was owed. In his 2005 Fader cover story, he described approaching his work at Cash Money with the mentality of a brother building something with family, not as a hired hand protecting his contractual rights and accounting obligations. He trusted them completely. He later acknowledged that trust cost him significantly, and Mannie was not the only one asking these questions. Juvenile left Cash Money in 2001, citing financial grievances. When the label refused to settle for $4 million, he took them to court and reportedly walked away with approximately $11 million. BG departed citing financial mismanagement and never returned. Producer Bangladesh, who made Lil Wayne's A Milli off Thaw Carter III, sued Cash Money in 2010 over royalties and told Vibe magazine directly that the label does not pay royalties. Turk sued for $10 million, more troubling given that he had originally signed at 17 years old, represented by a lawyer who also worked for Cash Money, a textbook conflict of interest. And Wendy Day, the woman who negotiated the historic Universal deal that made the Williams brothers rich, has alleged that when she attempted to collect her standard 5% finder's fee, Birdman essentially told her to sue him. The same script, different names, every situation follows the same arc. Somebody builds something, the money flows in, and the financial accounting that was supposed to flow back to the builder somehow does not make it there. For Mannie, it reached a breaking point around 2004 and 2005. He released his solo debut, The Mind of Mannie Fresh, in 2004, proving clearly that he had the talent and the audience to operate on his own. Then, in 2005, he officially left Cash Money. When asked in interviews why he left, he did not hide behind careful language. He said he left because of money, quote, scratch moolah. 3 words. No ambiguity from the man who built the sound of an empire. In June 2006, Cash Money and Mannie Fresh reached a legal settlement resolving the financial dispute. The terms were never made public. Standard confidentiality clauses sealed the specifics, leaving the public with confirmation that something real had been disputed and resolved, without ever knowing the dollar amount or the full scope of what was at stake. Birdman's side of this story is genuinely complicated, and it deserves to be acknowledged. In a 2018 interview with Billboard, Brian Williams spoke about his relationship with Mannie with evident warmth. Both men lost sisters during the years following their split. Mannie's sister Angela was murdered in 2007, and Birdman experienced his own family tragedy around the same period. Williams told Billboard that their bond grew stronger through shared grief and that Mannie himself organized their eventual Big Timers reunion. That detail matters. It says something real about the complexity of a relationship that cannot be reduced to a simple villain and victim story, even when the financial accusations are serious. The 2018 release of Designer Casket, part of the Before Anything Cash Money Story documentary soundtrack, was the first new Big Timers music in approximately 15 years. Mannie's production was immediately recognizable. The melodies, the rhythm, the bounce underneath everything. It sounded like coming home. And the willingness of Mannie Fresh to stand in that video alongside Birdman after everything that had passed between them said something important about who he is. In a 2020 Breakfast Club appearance, he put it plainly, "You live, you forgive, and you keep it moving." In April 2023, Reservoir Media announced the acquisition of Mannie Fresh's entire catalog, both his publishing rights and his recorded music rights. The price was not disclosed, but the deal confirmed what the music industry had always understood. Reservoir's announcement credited him with producing nearly all songs across 15 multi-platinum, platinum, or gold albums between 1998 and 2004, and noted that his catalog continues to be sampled by Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and Youngboy Never Broke Again. That catalog sale is as close to an official industry appraisal of Mannie Fresh's legacy as anything ever put on paper. You cannot unring the bell of 400 Degrees. You cannot pretend Back That Ass Up does not belong on a greatest songs list. The music lives, moves, and is still touching people who were not alive when it was recorded. The empire may have failed him financially, but the sound belongs to history. And now that he is opening up about what really happened, hip-hop is finally starting to fully account for what one of its greatest architects was never fully paid. What do you think about what Mannie Fresh went through at Cash Money? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more breakdowns like this one.